Starting now. So welcome. My name is Melinda Steffy. I'm a consultant working with the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition. I helped them with some development planning and other organizational items through the spring and summer, and now we're getting into what I'm calling strategic planning light, which is to say the strategy part is going to be real good, but it doesn't have quite as many of the, a strategic planning process can go on for a long time and have a lot of complex pieces, and we're doing a somewhat shorter version of it. And so today you all are coaches who work with the Robotics Coalition, and so we're really eager to hear from you, kind of draw on your experience and expertise to help the board and staff of the coalition identify what strategies are for the future and the long term. And I just want to acknowledge that the pandemic has thrown a wrench in the works in the short term, but and I'm sure Michael and Gloria have been or will be in touch with you about kind of what the near term plans and changes are. This is really to be thinking beyond, which means understanding what the landscape is now, but also looking ahead to what the future possibilities are. So I thought we would take a few minutes to get started for each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us what school you're with, what team you are with, and maybe a little bit about your involvement in the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition to date. And then I had suggested bringing an object to show and tell, that represents the coalition to you. I will start because I don't ever make somebody do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And if you don't have an object, don't stress out right now. Like, this is not, there's no reason to, this should be an enjoyable experience, not a stressful one. If you don't have an object handy, think about what your dream would be for what robotics could be in Philadelphia. So I will start here. I have a plant. I'm going to hold it up. It's a cutting from a big viney thing. I forget what they're called exactly. That's been growing in this jar of water for a little while, and it has some nice roots built up, and it's pretty much ready to be planted in soil. And I think about, this is not totally specific to the coalition, but I think about strategic planning kind of in this way, especially with a kind of emerging or still newer organization like the coalition, that there's this great growth that has already happened. There are these great roots that are growing, and that part of the work that we'll be doing over the next few weeks and months is to really land this in some healthy soil so that it can thrive over the long term, and not be dependent upon me remembering to put water in the glass. And so that's kind of, thinking about the coalition as having already programs and people involved that are strong and growing, roots growing, representing fundraising opportunities and kind of relationship building, and that how all of that can really turn into a healthy plant. So I'm going to pass it. I'm going to make Michael talk next since you all know him. And then if you could each just bump it around to someone else who hasn't gone yet, and we'll say hello that way. Thanks.
Oh, I'm embarrassed I did not come prepared with an objet. Yes, so I mean, you already know who I am, but as far as the sort of point where the coalition is, we are still in this sort of rapid growth phase, and we're sort of at the point where the coalition, we have like the bandwidth to grow and develop in a more intentional way instead of just like constantly racing for the next thing. And as we hit that point, I'm just so thankful that all of you have taken the time, both with your survey results and here in this focus group, to help us understand what robotics looks like at all sorts of different schools across Philadelphia, all sorts of different programs across Philadelphia, so that we can grow in a way that responds to all of those needs and can really just make the best experience for all of our students. So thank you. Let me pop over to Ian.
Hi, Ian Pasternak from Furness High School. So last year was our rookie year, and all the kids really enjoyed it. I don't have an object either as far as show and tell goes, but I don't know if this is necessarily my vision for what robotics could be, but I know from the kids that were involved last year, they were extremely excited to hear when I parroted something that I had heard, rumor-ish, that robotics might become an actual like sport type of thing versus an after-school club. And that was something that they were extremely interested in, because the general consensus was there aren't outlets for as many outlets for the kids who want to do something academic in nature and be just get notoriety outside of like a club. But this would be an actual school district sanctioned functioning event where there's awards and things like that outside of a club type of thing. And if we could get to that direction, I think that you'd get a lot. Not that you don't have a lot of buy-in from kids now, but even more, because it's just a different, I guess, situation. I don't know, but they were definitely very excited to hear that potentially could be a direction that it's going in. So I'm rambling, so I will stop talking now. Did I freeze?
Oh.
No, I'm okay.
Let's bump to Vicki.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Vicki Baker. I'm the coach at the Philadelphia High School for Girls. Our team are the Technobots. And we have been in existence a good while. I've been the coach there for 4 years after doing 13 years somewhere else at Overbrook High School in West Philadelphia. So my hope, I did think of an item. I took a picture, but it didn't show up on my my computer, so I just talk about it. So I thought about the collision as being like your like the strip you have, for all your plugs, because the strip is connected into the into the wall, and so it's powered by something. It's powered by electricity, but you have all these other points that plug in. To me, we all plug into this system that's helping us to create a larger network within Philadelphia of something that's really worthwhile. So I just think about how if you have your own power strip that we all plug into, and all of us are different. So my power strip might have my lamp and my computer, and might have other things into it. But so we're all have some kind of resourcing that we get from that. And to me, the beauty is that lots of things and lots of devices and lots of places can plug into the network. And the network can grow depending on how many plugs you have on your strip. But it allows something to branch out into other places. My hope would be that we can build. I visit each year a lot of different places. I participate in all that we do, but we also I intentionally go out into other places within FDCPA, and they have a lot more resources than we have of actual engineering support and physical people who are licensed engineers doing developmental work in a lot of industries that support their teams. And so my hope would be that as we grow and get more kids involved, I love the idea of it not just being a club. I talk about it as being a team and not a club anyway, because I just think that a club that meets once a week is not who we are. But I would hope there will be a way to increase the knowledge that they're able to get from our programs in a really significant way, so that as they move on and decide that they want to be an engineer, that they've had the rooting in that work that makes them truly competitive in having had the experiences that they've had with us. And let's see, I will pass it to Kurt.
Right, thank you. I'm Kurt Ahrens, the coach at the U School. Last year was sort of our 1.5 year. It was, in terms of our grant, I guess it was our rookie year, but we had kind of started late in the season the year prior to that. So I would hold up any of the tools in our toolkits to represent something that I think robotics provides to our students, and and that's why I think the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition is so valuable, that it's giving our students an opportunity to really get into some things that they may not have had access to at home or exposed to in their ordinary lives or their other coursework. Hands-on, problem solving, building, design, and of course the programming and the electronics, but even just, tightening up some screws and putting something together that has a form is new to many of my students. And, just seeing them figure out how to use these tools and make something is really enjoyable and valuable, I think. So, I think just continuing to provide that opportunity, as Vicki said, if we could have mentorship and support for even more advanced engineering, that would be fantastic. I had a mentor from the Navy, come for a couple months, and I think that was valuable, and maybe those mentors could themselves maybe have some more specific training and guidance so that they're, directly knowledgeable about the program. There's a lot of potential, a lot of great things we could do, and if it turns into an official sport, that would be great as well. Thank you. How about Chris?
Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Robinson. I have a team going into my 4th year, I believe, at Project Home's Honickman Learning Center in North Philadelphia. It's kind of like a community center, so I have a cross-section of students from many different schools. Sticking to the question, the one thing that I communicate to our students often is, in relationship to the coalition, is how to find resources. One of the benefits of having students from all over the city is that they kind of know somebody at one of the other schools and someone at the other team, even if it's just like I have chemistry with that person. So the coalition works very much as like a networking scheme of sorts. I've been able to get students interested in being a part of robotics because of them knowing a friend or knowing somebody else at their respective schools. That often isn't enough though. So I have to figure out other things that they might be interested in. And because of the nature of our program, we end up recruiting a lot of artists. And over the last few years, I've had an artist or two that's sort of been interested in the team, sort of been interested in some of the people on the team, and has contributed some piece of art in some capacity. So the t-shirt I'm wearing now is our team shirt from last year. I could grab it since we're all at home, and that kind of represents a little bit of how our team functions within the coalition. We bring a lot of different talented people, communicate across teams, but have a unique reason for kind of staying. I will pass it on to Paula.
Sorry we're late, we didn't get the link. So my name's Paula. I'm the robotics coach at Abraham Lincoln High School. This is, I think it's my 4th year actually hosting the team. I've really seen the team grow from sort of like at the first time it was really like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kids really getting involved, and now it's grown to perhaps we had 20 this year. Only perhaps 10 of the 20 wanted to do the competitive team. I've seen the kids really get involved with STEM. We had a PBL with Kristen from Department of Defense this year. We had a phenomenal experience with that. What was the other thing? General, with the Central Coalition, I have seen so much support in terms of mentorship. Every year we had a mentor from Central High School. They were phenomenal and great with our students. We love the Philly Expo. We've been able to go to that for the last 3 years, and I'm excited to see this program continue to grow. And I'm going to pick Laura.
Sorry that we were both late. We're jumping in briefly for another 10 minutes, and then Fisher's taking over for me. But I am one of 2 coaches at Bodine High School. My name is Laura Williams, and this is going to be our 3rd year with a team. And so we are officially fully in the toddler phase, and we are still growing as a team. Unfortunately, we had 7 of our 12 team members just graduate last year. So, and then 1 just transferred to another school. So we had a team of 12, and now we have a team of 4. And so we are very much looking forward to, and kind of our vision for our school specifically is to really grow as a team, because we need to get lots more people in so that we actually have a team over the next few years. Our vision is we get a lot of our students. We do at Bodine have a cohort of students that are really interested in engineering, and a lot of our students that join the team are very much wanting to be engineers when they graduate, and they want to go to school for engineering. And unfortunately, that means we have lots of people interested in the mechanical side of things, and we do not have a lot of people interested in the programming side. So that's always been our weakness. And so our vision as a group is to try and really increase our students' interest in programming and the opportunities there for them, which kind of dovetails nicely with what we're looking at for doing for this year. For the coalition, we have been amazingly blessed to have a lot of support. Every year, we have needed the mentorship of a lot of the central team members to be able to design and build our robot. And our first year, we would not have been able to program the robot because neither Fisher nor I had any familiarity with the block-based coding. Our robot would not have been able to move if it weren't for our mentor from Central. And I love that the kids have an opportunity to get together and to talk to kids from other schools about something that is not academic, but is still something that's really, really fun. And they oftentimes end up talking about things that have nothing to do with school. And it's just a forum, I think, that is really, really powerful. And so I hope that we're able to have still some of that inter-school collaboration and chatting time and just like interaction for them this year. So that's my thing. And I don't know who hasn't gone yet, but I know that Dave hasn't gone yet because he just popped on. So I'm going to popcorn to Dave.
So sorry for being.
Hey, Dave.
Sorry for being late. I just got the stuff from Laura to take over from her. So I am also a coach at Bodine. And so I'm just going to say everything that Laura said, since that's our team. We did have 2 mentors last year from DOD, and they were really helpful for the kids. And they forged some really nice relationships there, and it was just so nice to see those relationships build, because that's kind of what robotics is about, right? Building some new relationships in a new way. So with that, I'll go back to Michael.
Here, I'll bump it to, I think Zoe hasn't gone yet. Are you there, Zoe?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I can't keep my camera on because I am juggling my own children while doing this. And so I'm just going to keep it off most of the time. I am a teacher at Strawberry Mansion High School. This last year was our first season doing any kind of robotics. we have some fairly unique challenges in our school environment that make extracurriculars and robotics a challenge. So thinking about moving forward, I don't know, I mean, I guess what's most on my mind is communication. I mean, I think we had some interesting experiences working together as a team on our communication within our team last year. I think it's going to be a continued challenge for us to think about how we're doing that this year, and then also outside of our team across other teams and stuff like that. So that's where we are.
All right, David, let's get you.
Hey everybody, I'm David. Last year was our first year team at Constitution High School. And the Robotics Coalition for us has kind of given the opportunity for us to participate, to have formal and informal conversations about coding, robotics, engineering. And just kind of the power of having a cool, kind of funky robot in my science classroom throughout the entire year has kind of brought kind of robotics and STEM into our Constitution themed high school. So it's been really cool to see that grow and bring in more individuals than just our team. And so, yeah, it's been awesome. But as others kind of have mentioned, we're looking forward to kind of seeing what comes next. And how can we kind of really kind of boost those engineering skills that Vicki and others have mentioned.
Great. And Gloria, I think you get to wrap us up with introductions. Although it looks like you might be frozen right now, Gloria. We'll come back to you. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here. I know a couple of you have to hop off shortly. So what I'd like to do next is we're going to work together to try and create what I call a values map, which is where I'd like you to think about what do you value most about the work of the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition. And just take a couple minutes right now, jot a few things down, take some notes, and I'm going to put a link into, in like 2 minutes, I'll drop a link into the chat where for a shared document that we're going to work on those things, and I'll give more instructions about that along with the link. So just for a few minutes, think about what do you value most about the work of the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition? Maybe like pick your top 3 to 5 things. You can think about it in that way.
Melinda, did you call on me for a minute ago?
I did, and you were frozen. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, you can do that while folks are thinking about the values.
So I think everybody knows me. I'm the program director for the coalition, and I've been out to a lot of schools, just basically do a lot of the organizing and coordinating of things like this. Melinda together, but you know, we got everybody on, which is awesome. I'm in the Poconos and just keep coming out. Plus I have almost no power left despite being hooked up to stuff. So I'm probably gonna cut it here. There was a request again to just record. Are we recording?
Yes, we are. I'll make sure you get it.
Awesome. Awesome. So I will probably sign off here unless anybody wants to ask me anything. All right. So have a lot of fun and get some good stuff.
Thanks, Gloria.
Bye.
All right, as you have your your values ready, I just shared a link to a Google slide. And I will share it on my screen in a sec, except I also want to be able to type into it, so I want to see what's happening. You'll see there's fake Post-it notes here. Grab one and start typing your things in. Put a different value on each Post-it note. So if you have 3 things, you should do 3 Post-it notes. And then as you're looking, take a scan over the page, and if you see one that looks like something you already have, rather than making a brand new Post-it for it, you can add an asterisk to boost it. And there's an example on the left-hand side in bright yellow. And if you need more Post-its, there's some around the edges. So take a few minutes to get your values loaded into here. Thanks to whoever's boosting chocolate and snacks again.
That was me. A huge part of our budget every year is feeding our children. So Paula, it's 2:30. We gotta run. So Paula and I are gonna go. We have to go get trained on how to write lesson plans for everybody else. So.
All right. Well, thanks for popping in. And we'll make sure a recording of this gets circulated. So if you want to see what was talked about and contribute anything else, you're more than welcome to do that.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
And I apologize about this, but please do share the link with me, PA Miller, because I really want to know what's going on. Thank you again.
Yep.
Bye.
And if, as you're boosting something, you feel like there's a little more you want to clarify, you can, below the asterisks, add some additional details, as in the example about chocolate. I should check, was everyone able to get into the Google slide okay? Anyone need technical support? All right, are folks still adding things? Can nod your heads, I'm looking at your faces. Is everything in there? All right, what I'd like to do now is try and kind of organize this. You can keep typing in, but try to look for things that connect with each other. So please feel free to chime in with your comments. You can turn your mics on. If you see things that you think relate to each other, if there are things that feel especially important, I'm going to start just kind of rearranging things a little bit to try and cluster them and group them around shared ideas and get the pieces that have been the most boosted towards the center. Now I'm interested that this oh, I see mentorship is up there and there's a network of coaches. Okay, we'll get those two next to each other. I was gonna say, this one is not boosted, but you all talked about how valuable you find the mentorship. And training and support administration. I'm gonna put those two near each other.
I think the network of coaches and mentors is different than mentorship.
Okay.
I think, I don't know, I didn't type that one, but when I read it, I think of the fact that we actually are a network. In other words, the idea that we are the support of each other. I think of mentorship as being the mentors that come from the other schools because we have, you know, we have the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition. That makes sense. But I don't know what the people who typed those, that's how I read them.
Yeah, does someone who typed one of those want to chime in about what you're thinking? Or others who think about what a distinction might be there?
Yeah, I think I agree with Vicki that when we say just mentorship, I think we're usually thinking of either students or adults that are coming in to support our students, which is different from like the professional network that we are building with each other.
It's kind of funny because as a novice coach, I kind of viewed a mentorship from you all, more experienced coaches, and learning from you all. So I boosted mentorship, but that's what I was thinking.
Oh, okay. So someone else thinking that. Okay.
Well, we've got them both represented here, so that's great. Okay. So let's see, I'm gonna just stick that one over there for now. I'm gonna try and get a little student section over here. So I'm kind of thinking in the way this is organizing, the left-hand side is turning out to be a little bit more related to student experiences, and the right-hand side may be for kind of the more organizational or operational side. I'm gonna move some of these extras out of the way. Feel free to grab them if you need them to write more.
Could somebody who put or boosted gracious professionalism be a little bit more specific about what you mean in this context?
Well, that's one of the tenets of the first robotics program, and I think it's just an excellent example or idea to put in front of our students, that if you're going to participate in this organization, this activity, let's think about how we interact with others. And so I see that one as maybe more relating to the students, but it also covers our interaction with students and with each other, certainly. So it's really applies to everyone, but it's not so much organizational, it's more programmatic.
Though also that idea that even though our teams are like competitors against each other, like the whole structure of the coalition is about helping each other. So I think maybe that's more of the cooperation side, but Melinda's just going to get her crash course in the first jargon.
I like it. Could someone talk about this slide that says peer? What were you thinking in that one? Maybe that was someone who left.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to invent what it means?
Maybe peer relationships. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
that those are kind of captured in some of the other post-its. But you do get relationships among the coalition, that are I guess they're less formal than some of the other relationships. You know, the students sometimes, you know, their relationships individually among their peers.
You know, I didn't see reference to teamwork, but actually that's a huge part of having a robotics team, and those kinds of meaningful and effective peer relationships are certainly developed as a team works together. So maybe there's a connection there.
Yeah. All right, so here's how I'm organizing these a bit. It seems like these three at the top here, I see there is collaboration between teams. There's very much this sense that the network and the idea of mentorship, I think, is that there is someone who has specialized knowledge or skills that is outside of your normal circle, who comes in to support and build relationship. Similarly, this idea of a network of coaches and mentors, it's people from multiple places coming together. So there's very much this sense, I think, that, and you know, given the stars on the boosts on those, that is a really central aspect of the coalition. And I like to think about like what goes in the center of, if you might notice, I kind of started organizing it like a circle, and what is the thing in the center? And it seems like this idea, essentially, as you talked a little more about the gracious professionalism, although that might be first jargon, that also seems like a kind of core central value that perhaps holds the other things together. Does that sound right to you all, or is there something else you think might go in that middle spot as a kind of core thing around which everything else revolves?
Financial support doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, it's true. That is
I'll do as well.
An important one for sure.
I feel like that is like really important in terms of bringing the project to a wider variety of schools and types of schools. Like I know, as Strawberry mentioned, there would be no chance whatsoever that we could do any kind of program like this without the financial support and the resource support. It would not be possible in our context. So so
in some ways, that's
really
like
essential.
A really big foundation. That really supports everything that's above it.
Yeah, and that's something that is sort of at the core of what the coalition is doing on like the macro scale, is building equity and making sure that all of Philadelphia's schools have the opportunity to support, to run these programs. And I like that isn't necessarily apparent at each individual school, but we should capture that sort of macro goal as well.
All right, I'm gonna just shift a little bit. I think you're right, Michael. I think that is also, very much at the center here, perhaps paired with this idea of collaboration and cooperation that leads to, I'm not sharing my screen now, but I'm swirling around these ones at the top that are all kind of relationship and teamwork oriented. It leads over, of course, to the benefits to students of college and career readiness, the learning experiences themselves, the resources that make that learning possible. And then I think agency structure. This one about agency, when I first read it, I was thinking more organizational. It looks like maybe that's actually a thought about youth learning to problem solve. Is that correct?
Yes, I added agency because that is exactly how I interpreted it.
Mm-hmm.
Having these, defined problems and challenges in the context of the robotics competition, it gives the students a focus for their teamwork. But with the financial support and the mentorship and all of that, it gives the students it empowers them to do these amazing things. So it's showing them that they can accomplish things. So it helps them learn agency, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably add to boosting college and career readiness to students creative problem solving.
I'm going to make that its own thing.
That tie them, they do this creative problem solving that they don't seem to really get much global experience with in their education.
Yeah.
We had a woman who was helping as a volunteer at one of the competitions, and she was saying how she noticed that something goes wrong and they have a conversation, no matter what team it is, and they run off and they brainstorm what they need to do and they collaborate with somebody else and they fix it and they try it and they fix it and they try it and they fix it and they try it. Where do they ever do that?
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think these kind of all hands-on learning, creative problem solving, agency, all speak to that, the impact of robotics. I'm going to start changing the colors of some of these post-it notes there it is. So let's make students this brighter blue, just to unify a little bit. And then this one, collaboration between teams, seems like, there's like the internal, what happens in each individual team perhaps, and then there's what happens across teams, and then there's the professional. Ooh, that one's a little hard to read, sorry. Go to a lighter version of that. Didn't help very much. Peer relationships is kind of a universal one, I suppose. It's student peer relationships, it's coach and mentor peer relationships. Does someone want to say more about on the organizational support and administration side? What were you thinking of when you wrote those?
I typed administration because as a collection of teams, when the season is starting, when there's a way in which to bring people together to have conversations about issues, there's a central point. Since my focus, I envision the task not only to be what happens in our teams, but what happens as a result of having this entity called the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition. To me, there's sort of this there are a lot of things where we kind of need a top-down approach, and having one person and their staff people, if you will, for lack of a better way to think about it, who actually run those tasks or contact everybody. I mean, even this work that we're doing today, we got an email from one person from the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition saying, hey, this is what is happening for the group. And so, that came from one person. So to me, that's an administrative, not top down from the standpoint of a real hierarchy, but having some group who takes responsibility for contacting everybody else, sending out information, being the central point of certain things, just being a part of providing things for us, providing it from a nucleus of one place.
And letting us know the calendar of events, having events, the workshops, the training, kickoff event. And finally, the competitions. I mean, that's got to be very complex to put that on. So there's a whole lot of organizational infrastructure or human power that enables all that.
The advice and support that we get is informed. So it takes into account some of the differences that the unique circumstances that Philadelphia students might have, the unique circumstances that people affiliated with the school district might have, and supports us with those things in mind. So like we're getting financial support, and I'm not a teacher in the school district, but I know that like that would be frustrating and difficult to try to manipulate and manage getting the funds through a school district, a large school district. So that's very much appreciative, and it makes it so that you can be an instructor and work with your students and not have to worry about things falling apart because of other stuff.
Thank you. Does anyone have any further comments about this values map? We're going to take a 5-minute break before we move on, but if you have any other things specific to this, I'd love to hear. All right, great. Thank you all. Let's take 5 minutes and come back at 2:55 to move on to the next stage of our project. Welcome back, folks. All right, as you're all coming back, we're going to move on to second slide here, which I will scribe, so you don't need to worry so much about typing for this part. What I would like to move into now is a SWOT analysis, which is thinking about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the coalition specifically, but also, I mean, one of the things that Michael and Gloria and I have talked about is a lot is, and mostly them trying to help me understand, the relationship between the coalition and the teams, and that, you know, you all are running teams at schools, and the coalition is really there to kind of boost and support, elevate the work that you're doing. And recognizing that right now, the way things are, coalition support perhaps makes it possible for teams to exist that would not otherwise exist. But that the hope over the long term is that teams could, in fact, you know, continue to survive and sustain themselves, even if the coalition weren't in the picture, which that is not alarmist. It's just like the sense that there needs to be this balance of like, of equity and elevating and creating opportunity, with also making sure that teams, that robotics is strong enough and able to keep thriving and growing. So what I'd like to do for this next part is kind of, I like to call it popcorn style, which is, instead of thinking about needing to say super long sentences, just kind of call out some words or phrases. And we're going to go through the 4 quadrants of this grid, and I will write down some things. And if there's anything that someone says that seems unclear, feel free to ask follow-up questions, but otherwise just popcorn it out and I will jot down notes, and then we can kind of get through. Now there may be some overlap also, I think, in thinking about, you know, what we just expressed in the values map. There might be a lot of that shows up in this strengths category or in under opportunities. I tend to think a little bit about strengths and weaknesses being somewhat internal or like about the organization, and opportunities and threats are somewhat external and a little more related to the surrounding landscape. But it doesn't need to be exclusively that way. So let's start. Popcorn out some things you think are the coalition's strengths.
People.
Collaboration.
Money.
Events.
Experience.
Experience for whom?
Experience in robotics. Experience
Gotcha.
doing this work. On connections. Relationships.
All right, anyone have any questions or things they want to clarify about any of the strengths that are listed here?
The coalition seemed to kind of anticipate our needs at different parts of the season, which was really useful. not sure how to put that into a bullet point, but like in the fall, it was just kind of like really high level with the robot, just kind of getting a chassis and then programming it. So it kind of met our team where they were at over the course of the year as we prepared for the competition. Not give us everything at once, which was useful.
Yeah, it doesn't need to just be one word popcorns to be to be clear. If there's something longer like that, that's great. All right, if you think of other strengths, we can always come back and add them in. Let's move over to weaknesses. What do you think are things, and I guess another way to think about it, you know, things that could be improved, like maybe it's okay, but like there could be, something could be stronger, there could be more to it. You know, maybe it's something you wish were really different. Again, thinking a little bit more kind of internally about what's happening within the coalition and the teams themselves.
Don't hold back. Lay it on now.
we can kick Michael out for a little bit if, you know.
Yeah, I would say something that I touched on in the introduction. I think that professional engineering support for schools, both in mechanical, electrical, you know, the major components that are needed, that are real engineering, you know, professional things,
Mm-hmm.
You know, actual people.
Not knowing how to fundraise.
Meaning, who doesn't know how to fundraise?
Well, you know, there's fundraising and there's fundraising. If the coalition didn't have the chunk of change it had, it would change how we fundraise, because we'd have to fundraise to a much higher extent to make up that money.
So you're saying teams don't know how to fundraise?
Yeah, teams don't know how to fundraise.
Okay.
There's a lack of facilities sometimes. So some teams don't have spaces or tools or materials at their hand.
Mm-hmm.
There are barriers to students participating in weekend events.
I would say it's kind of in that same vein, influence. I think we have our own local influence in our own area that's stronger than us as a whole. So that, and they have more influence because of their connections downtown. But if we were as a group to say across the system with all of us, I mean, as there are more schools, I would think that one of the weaknesses would be that it hasn't meant that as an organization that you have the level of influence that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk to my council person whenever I see him about robotics, because he connects my participation with the work that I did when I was a teacher at Overbrook and a coach at Overbrook. But I don't know whether, for instance, even there, whether the influence that maybe we ought to have as this body is growing, you know, the school district is supportive within their own little, you know, areas, and they support what we want to do. If you want to have a press conference, they support, you know, they support those things, but as a group, there isn't the influence.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like shape ourselves like a grassroots political organization.
Yeah, over time, you want to be able to, if the name of robotics came up, you'd want somebody to think Philadelphia Coalition. You know? I noticed in the paper there's a new something that's through GlaxoSmithKline. There's some STEM, you know, thing happening that I read about, and I thought, okay, well, how do we tap into that? You know, who are those people? That's money, you know.
Yeah, well, we applied for a $100,000 grant from them. So
Well,
Stay
fingers
tuned.
crossed.
I think maybe that's one of our weaknesses too, is that I'm thinking that, and what if there had been, when I went on the website, a way for me to apply, I wouldn't know that you guys had applied. You know, like the school district makes a point of saying, do not go out and try to get some big grant without telling us that you're going there, because we don't need to have, our own grants organization might be going for that. We don't need these little, you know, tiddly people. When we're trying to get $1 million, you're coming in for 25, you know. Maybe just communication of those kinds of things.
I think a strength that is also kind of a weakness might be communication. I think Michael and Gloria are really good at communicating via email, but sometimes when I get all the information via emails, there's kind of like missed chains, or like if I didn't go to a meeting, then I'm kind of a little bit out of the loop for the next one. Like I thought this was a meeting about the fall for the makeup meeting for the people that missed last week. So maybe having like Slack or some other way where we could kind of have like a board of kind of resources or the video of this meeting, and ask really quick kind of informal questions to the network, or maybe more formal questions to Michael and Gloria. Because my email quickly fills up with a whole bunch of robotics, but also school kind of emails.
Yeah, I didn't know if the meeting actually happened after getting the email that Gloria said she'd only heard from 2 people. I didn't even know if they even had it because I wasn't available. So yeah, that would be helpful.
I'm thinking from the mindset of a lot of new teams as a weakness. Successes aren't necessarily attractive. So sometimes it's a really big deal when you have 3 or 4 people at an event on a Saturday, or you're able to learn something that you would not have been able to get as a team without the coalition. And it's difficult to broadcast that as a success to the greater public.
Yeah, that would be really cool to kind of share successes. Like I know it was a really big day when like our wheels finally moved on the robot, and it was like a little event that we shared as a first year team. But it'd be cool to kind of like chime in from other teams and maybe share it with the broader school community too.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of, I appreciate that you all are problem solving the weaknesses and have really great suggestions. I think a lot of these kind of maybe sort of tie into opportunities too. So let's shift there a little bit. If you, I mean, again, continue to keep, if there are things related to strengths or weaknesses that you want to keep adding in, please do. But thinking about opportunities, what are things that maybe you know of in the broader landscape, or that that you think is something the coalition should make a move on that, you know, would really be a boost to the organization?
David had already mentioned the prospect of going under the athletics umbrella.
Yeah, becoming academic team as a category. Yeah, that would be an opportunity. And of course, there's always the opportunity of more money, you know, just fundraising beyond what we do, like somebody that, you know, long-term, you know, gives you 10 years of $100,000 a year kind of thing, you know. Maybe as STEM continues to be something that's viewed as being important, you know, there's an opportunity to get a bigger push, a bigger piece of it. I think there's an opportunity just for more teams, and I know money has a lot to do with that. But when I look at so when I learned that they were going to be expanding teams, I emailed the principal at Overbrook to say, hey, you've still got a room. It's still got the stuff that I left there. you know, there aren't as many comprehensive high schools that have joined us. So to me, that's an opportunity to make a really great educational program available to students that that wouldn't otherwise have this at all. So if you look at if we were to segment who's actually participating because of the coalition, historically speaking, the district had a robotics program, and so anybody could be a part of it. And so many schools across type of school participated because it had a central home in the school district. And I'm not suggesting, I mean, there's so much red tape and so many politics there. This is a really good alternative to that, but I think that's what you lose, is you have an opportunity. I mean, a weakness would be that it just doesn't, the diversity of types of schools, when you look at the district as a whole, you see that the schools are participating are magnets and special admits and a very small number of neighborhood schools, and those neighborhood schools don't tend to be in some of the more disadvantaged areas. So, and I'm not saying that Lincoln's not disadvantaged, but it's really different than some other areas of the city, the makeup of those students. So I think there's an opportunity to broaden the types of schools and students, well, schools, because all of our schools have students. I mean, my school has students from all over the city, so we're not just wealthy or, you know, well educated.
I really agree with that, Vicki, and I think an opportunity might be to look at, I know that when we're in school, transportation and timing is really hard, but opportunity might be to look at cross-school or cross-organization collaborative teams, because I know for Strawberry Mansion, our student population is so small that is a large barrier to us to successfully fielding a team, is to just have enough students, and kind of like what I think Chris was saying, I'm not sure, I wasn't looking, was like getting enough kids who actually can attend things can be really challenging in the context of our neighborhood and our school. So that might be an opportunity there. And then I think the other thing that comes to mind when I think about neighborhood schools like Mansion and like Martin Luther King and probably a couple other ones is that we have an extraordinarily high percentage of special education students. And I don't know what that would look like in the context of FIRST. I think it's a gap that the organization as a national organization has. So I don't know where that would fit, but I don't see FIRST as being particularly inclusive to students with significant special education support needs. So more than half of our students at Strawberry Mansion have IEPs, and a large percentage of them are emotional support needs, as well as other types of needs. But that's a challenge and potentially an opportunity that would allow us to be more inclusive, especially if we look at the neighborhood schools, because many of them have been situated in the district policies such that we are left with a large percentage of our student population who has greater needs.
Oops, I didn't quite mean to do it that way. But this is just a graph that shows sort of the portion of special admit and charter schools versus neighborhood and citywide over the last, 6 years.
So Michael, I would just push on this a little bit and say that I don't think that, I don't consider citywide school, and I will fully admit that I'm more extreme than the average person in Philadelphia, but I don't consider citywide schools to be non-selective. I know that they use a lottery process, but I don't think that that's equivalent to non-selective in a variety of ways.
Oh yeah, okay. I would have to agree. Having been at a neighborhood school, Overbrook is a neighborhood school, and a school that has any choice of who comes is not a neighborhood school.
Yeah, I would agree with that strongly. I would differentiate between those two buckets just in looking at the information, because I think it's a very different setting and set of parameters and situation.
Okay. Are they sort of, Should we think of them as 3 buckets instead of 2 then?
Yeah, I think it would be. Well, what do you mean? What do you
Or
mean?
would you, I guess the
You
question is
put them
whether
with special admit, Vicki?
citywide goes with special admit, or does citywide a separate tier?
Oh, I think it goes with special admit, because citywide selection are not just lottery.
Yeah,
Okay.
I could see it going either way. I could see it being 3.
They choose their students.
And they choose by removal as well, by who they keep.
But they even their admissions, because you put an application there doesn't mean that you weren't selected when you get a letter saying that you have been assigned to that school. It's sort of it's an internal thing.
Okay.
It's like my
Thank you. That's helpful.
My students went
citywide is.
My students went. My sons went to Greenfield Middle School, which is different, but they supposedly had a lottery, and my students were my sons were selected because they wanted them, and they wanted them for a lot of reasons: academics, mental fortitude, 2-parent household, big mouth mom. They, but I don't see a school that has citywide selection as not selecting their own children.
Okay, thank you for that. Citywides are my blind spot. That's the flavor of district school that I have not taught in.
Yeah. I have. And you're absolutely right, Zoe, that one of the biggest differences is that neighborhood is where you go back to if they decide that you can no longer attend a school that selected you, no matter how you got there. That's the neighborhood schools. I mean, there are neighborhood kids who wanted to go there, or their parents said, you don't need to go all over that city. We got a good school right here. We got a school right here. We went to Overbrook, my mother went there, my brother went there, you're going there. So you have kids who want to go there even, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of really great things happening at neighborhood schools, but you don't hear about, you don't hear about those things. So it's not a school where you had to go because you couldn't go anywhere else necessarily.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, Vicki. I appreciate that. It's just like you were saying, there are students who opt in, and then it is also a place for everybody who does not have other choices available to them for a variety of reasons.
You can't see him, but I have a 4-year-old person running around my office right now. So pardon me for a sec while I try and get him out the door. But I just want to thank you. I think this is really, really helpful conversation, and appreciate everyone's feedback. So just give me a moment. You can use the next minute to think about, oh, there he is.
Let him wave at us. It's okay. Let him wave. That's what he wants. He wants to see what's going on up there.
Probably.
Let him see what's happening. Hey, sweetie.
All right, time for you to go downstairs. Love ya. Pardon me for a moment. You may think about what threats might exist. All right, sorry about that. The life of virtual work. All right, so let's move on to threats and talk. What are things that you think could really undermine the coalition?
Does David have something?
Yeah, I just had one quick.
Oh, sure.
So I've been part of a cohort of teachers that are getting trained to teach CS courses and then implement them. And I know that that's a movement district-wide. And I know that some of the coaches are both in those meetings as well. And it's spearheaded by like CS4 Philly and supported by Comcast, and they have events and stuff like that. But it's really—
What is it, David? What kind of, I just didn't hear what the initiative is.
Oh, it's computer science. So they're training teachers for AP computer science principles, and then I got trained to teach AP computer science A this year. It's been really synergistic at our school for students that are into coding. It's like a natural application to go into robotics. I know that some of the other coaches are also kind of in that cohort. And there's an organization, CS for Philly, that's trying to push this as well, and it's becoming a lot more vibrant. And they have Comcast and kind of some company support. And it seemed like it would be a natural partnership for robotics too. Or even just looking for where to kind of expand into, looking to see where those programs are. And then,
Great, thank you. All right, so thinking about
also under the in a similar vein on the opportunity side, these sort of larger organizational networks that are popping up, the extracurricular collaborative and the STEM equity partnership are two that I have just joined this summer, sort of on our behalf. And it still sort of remains to be seen how, like what the tangible fruits of those partnerships will be, but I think it's certainly an opportunity.
Great. Anything else under opportunities? All right, so thinking about the opposite of opportunities and what might, what might threaten the well-being of the coalition or robotics teams, what might make it extra hard. I think big obvious one starts with C and ends with Ovid right now.
Yeah, virtual learning, yeah. They're not even at the schools, yeah.
But thinking, and I realize that's very fully present on everyone's minds right now, but even thinking as much as you can, kind of beyond that, thinking about what some of the maybe potential threats were this past year before the pandemic, that will also be useful, I think, for just getting a sense of the landscape you're operating in and where some of the, the potholes are.
I think school schedules play an important role. The threats to students can be things like other clubs and athletics, because their focus, is hard to fight. Administrators at the schools make a big difference in having the level of support that you need to move on and do the work. I just wrote some things, money drying up, not just for the coalition, but the ability at school level to have the monetary support that's needed. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon, but there's also just the threat of focus. I mean, STEM is a big thing, right now. It's been a big thing for a number of years. It continues to seem to be something that people are willing to support, because it means a lot for how the United States will be able to move forward and the number of professionals needed by corporations. I mean, there are all these reasons that they feel like they need students to move in that direction. I think that from my conversations with students, when they leave, the support for minority students in that realm are not as positive as the experiences they have with us. They're not as welcomed in those environments. They're not felt to be a big part of the planning for tomorrow. Tomorrow's STEM, leaders in some cases are thought to be a threat to minority. The minority students are thought to be a a threat to those who are in the majority population, just their presence, and they're often a smaller percentage of those classes. So, you know, you're an African-American student, you know, it might just be 2 of you in a group of 200, you know, so I think that if you fall out of favor for some reason, or things shift, that's a threat to all that we do, because we rely on the fact that people believe that we're valuable and the things that we're doing are valuable.
Yeah. Thank you.
Those are just like my 5. Here's an assignment to write, so now I did 5 things.
So the short-term threat of the pandemic is virtual learning. There's also a long-term threat to funding. Already we lost the PA Smart program. It just is not happening this year. And depending on which direction the economy goes, all of your philanthropies that are looking at their investment returns, that's all, you know, up in the air.
Yeah. What's the new normal going to look like, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
I do also wonder about, this is not, I guess this is more specific school team focused, but as more programs are developed at some schools, so like thinking about that computer science initiative as an example, those things are offered at some schools and not all schools. And I feel like it really creates a very unequal starting point for different schools. And so this is, I think it's both an opportunity, like this is a program that can help bridge some of that, but it's also a real challenge for schools that don't have any of that programming built in and can't have it built into their school program to compete in what is also a competition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to what extent the coalition can sort of, under the heading of networking, help coaches sort of bring computer science or robotics or sort of engineering classes in. There are already several coaches who are running robotics classes where their team is a class and the students are getting credit and it's part of the teacher's course load. And I'd be interested to see whether that's something that can be sort of duplicated, and whether there are, as Zoe is saying, if different types of schools, like if the neighborhood schools have much more rigid curriculum, I don't know if that's true now. I think
it is definitely true.
Definitely true.
Definitely true.
And staffing and rostering, like we don't have any open space in our rostering. So like even if I wanted to teach anything, I can't, because I'm the only teacher who teaches what I teach, and we need all the sections of that. So I mean, I think maybe it's also like, I know it's not the point of this, but if we're looking at solutions, maybe part of that is along the lines of what Vicki was talking, if things are in favor with the district and they're talking about STEM, then maybe we need to really push them to say, like, potentially you need to think about how you're staffing to allow for positions that support that in the school day, even if it's beyond how you would normally staff a smaller school. And that's not just neighborhood schools, because it also would be true of like citywide schools that are really small or other programs, but definitely for the neighborhood schools, especially as our enrollment has shrunk, it's a real problem.
Zoe, what you're also talking about is the money to roster in electives, because in the neighborhood schools, the district requires rostering in certain kinds of courses. So when I taught at Overbrook, there were 2 classes that freshmen took in math and 2 classes that freshmen took in English. Or maybe that will be in sophomore year now, because that's when they take the Keystone exams. So there are all these other things that get rostered in as academics, so that the number of there used to be a time where at the schools they were divided into academies. So you could have an academy that had a focus that was STEM. And so those children, by nature of their rostering, would have electives. But as the focus more on testing and less flexibility in rostering happened, they don't have as many electives, period. So that's where you would come. And I mean, tied to that, I think a threat is movement, teacher movement. So I was force transferred 6 years ago from Overbrook. And so that school no longer has a robotics program. They have the space that I fought vehemently to keep, though I get last September, I got a call saying they were going to use that room. And if I wanted anything there, I needed to come. And then when I showed up, they said, oh no, we changed our mind. That room's not going to be touched this year. So, because I left stuff there in the hopes that somebody else would pick it up, knowing that I had been the only one that really was shepherding that program for, I guess, the 11 or 12 years that I ran it. But, you know, it just still, I hoped that since that room was set up, somebody would take it over. So one of the biggest threats is if, you know, someone changes schools or retires or, you know, whatever, or an administrator comes in who is not interested in that work. So when I get a call and says there's a workshop somewhere, do I want to bring kids? And I always say yes. I ask later, I say, yes, count me in. I'll figure out, you know, how many students can I bring? But I have had administrators that were open to that, you know, so the person, even though first says we have to have 2 people, there's usually one person that's really doing it, unless you have a class. Then it's a whole different, you know, after school, running it.
Yeah, we have very few spaces for electives at all for the students at Mansion. The way that rostering is set up and works, we have very few, and it's mostly upperclassmen who get them. Mm-hmm. And they're mostly CTE, like pathway type stuff. Although they have some art, but there's no space in our rostering for anything other than art, music, and culinary as electives.
And I asked at one time if we could do something that was in the morning, even though I wasn't sure kids would get up in the morning. And I was told that they couldn't add a 0 period, even though there are, at Girls High, we basically have our first period is a 0 period that happens before 8 o'clock. So, you know, there's flexibility some places and not flexibility others in how things are done across schools, and money, you know.
Okay. Chris, David, anything from you on the weakness front? Or threats front, sorry, wrong category.
Most of the things that I thought of are already on there, so.
Same.
Great. Thanks, everyone. This is super helpful context, and will, so just to fit what we're doing right now in this session into the bigger picture, we'll be holding a similar but slightly differently structured session next week with some students. And then we'll be circling back to the Coalition's Board of Directors to engage them in really kind of sharing all of this input and looking for the highlight areas that the Coalition can really focus on over the coming years. So this is all so valuable, and I really appreciate it. I wanted to follow up next with just a few questions I had from the survey results, and if there's anything else, not that I expect you to remember what was in the survey, but if there's anything else related to the survey that you wanted to talk about or that Michael has questions about, I just wanted to touch base about a few things that I saw there. And I think maybe the person who made this comment left. I think this one came from Paula maybe, but a comment that there tend to be more students who participate in after school or club activities than who attend workshops and competitions. And I just wanted to make a little space for you all to talk about that. If that's okay, then that's fine. Like, we don't need to change something that's not a problem. If that's something where you think there are barriers that the coalition could help to address and make it possible for more students to compete, I'd be interested to hear your ideas or thoughts on that.
I think the situations are really different depending on who your students are. I know that when we have Saturday workshops, I have, you know, there are barriers of work schedules, religious obligations, other enrichment activities that they're involved in as students, transportation, and then just flexibility and ability to traverse the city. My funny story I like to tell people is that we had an event at Central, and Girls High is right up the street. Okay, I mean right up the street, if anybody doesn't know where we are. And I had a student said she wanted to come, but she didn't know where Central was. And I explained over and over and over that she just had to walk down the hill, and I literally had to go meet her. Because the only place that she went was from her house to Broad and Olney, down that half a block to Girls High and back up. She didn't know anything else about the neighborhood. We couldn't have met at the pizza shop four addresses up from Olney and her have known where we were going. I mean, that's a kind of extreme, but you know, some of them don't traverse the city. So I've literally, you know, so there are issues having something outside of the school day, you know, where just depending on your student, who they are, what they've done, where they go, and their parents being comfortable with them going somewhere else as well. And I've had to have the team meet at the school to go other places because the parents were more comfortable, but they weren't going to be going to Boys Latin in West Philadelphia by themselves. And they're not taking them. They're not, you know, they don't have the option of driving them there. So we sometimes, I think, assume that children have flexibility that they don't have. That might, I can't speak for Paula, but I do know that I've had those kinds of experiences.
If events, I don't know if we probably couldn't do this with competitions, but we could probably do it with workshops during the school day that we would run as field trips during the school day. Would that be better for anybody?
I think that would be worse because then I have to do the whole sub thing. And we've always had pretty good luck getting kids to come. The work thing gets to be a problem, but normally if we give them enough, and at least on our team, if we give them enough lead time, they find a way to make it work. But the idea that we had 2 students last year that their father had to drive them because they had gotten in some trouble at home and didn't believe that they were actually going. So Laura and I would call parents in the morning and assure them that they were coming and then meet them at the event. But, you know, so it just, I think transportation gets to be somewhat of an issue on weekends, but we always have to fundraise for food anyways, so we figure transportation is something we have to pay for.
Well, Michael, I like the idea of a field trip. I don't think we could do them for the number of workshops that we do right now on Saturdays, but if you had it has to seem like really great, like if you did it at Temple Engineering or some company, or, you know what I mean? We have to sell it locally, and I think that varies by administration. So when I was at Overbrook, I didn't have to sell anything. I could go in and say, Ms. Young, I got this great opportunity for kids. Go for it, Baker. Let's do it. You know, I never had to worry. I have a principal, it's the second year she's in our building. But I have found that I had to explain more things because they're missing school. You know, what's the educational purpose? And yes, then there's the question of how do you, do I get coverage? How long am I gone? Do I get coverage? Is it a sub? So you do have some additional, but if it came from somewhere, that's why I say our influence as an organization and what we're doing for children, if the principals got a notice saying that the district is so fortunate to have Comcast is going to be offering a day-long program for all the coalition students, and they're going to be gone all day. And so, one day sub allowance, whatever it's called, I'm sure they have their own name for it, is being offered to every school that has coalition kids. And so, or if it was they're going to do it once a month, whatever it is, but then it's not us begging local organization by local school to say, can I take my kids? Because then I'm at the whim of the school, and I'm at the whim, and some principals would say, you can do it. Yeah. Do you have coverage? So now it's up to me. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know for me that the hardest part of any sort of during the school day field trip is missing class. Both my students don't like missing class. My colleagues don't like me taking students out of class. And since so much of this sort of runs off the goodwill of our colleagues, whenever they have to cover for us, you're spending that social capital down really quick. But that's also a good thought, though, if there's a way for the coalition to pay for subs so that it's not like, I don't even know how that, I guess like, I assume that the principals must have some sort of budget line for those elective subs where
they have a, what are they, F? Oh gosh.
Oh yeah, there's a code for it, but who pays for it?
But that's what I'm saying, in their budget, it may not have that code, but that's what that one little line is. They have they have a certain number of those F whatevers every year, and they can decide how they'll be used or not used. If we're paying for it or the district, whatever. I mean, I don't know how they get budgeted within a school, but if we didn't have to have the local, challenge there, that, or if it happened at, it's going to happen at 4 o'clock, or it's going to happen at something, and there's a little, little bus that comes and picks them up and takes them wherever it is, and they leave at 2 o'clock, or they leave at 1:30, like a sport would. We don't have any problem with with sports teams in their season.
Yeah, well, and that's a good question to Gloria's. Sorry. So yeah, looking at sports, my guess is that sport teams don't have the same issue of, I've got 20 kids on the basketball team show up for all the practices, but on game day I only get 8. Right? I don't think that's not an issue they deal with, and it's not an issue to travel around. And the parents understand that they're going to be traveling around the city to different schools to play.
They're on a bus. The district does everything for them together. They do the uniforms. They do, they come after school. They get a sticker on their TransPass to go home after hours. They, everything that could possibly be a barrier has been handled. And if I'm a coach, my roster gets done so that I'm, there's a math teacher who coaches a number of sports. So he just doesn't have an 8th period class. He doesn't have a last period of the day, because on the years where they have not worked that out, they have to schedule somebody to cover him. So the institution, if you will, takes over and makes all of that very smooth. And so there is no, you still have as a teacher, they have to come and tell us. They have a slip. Certainly girls they have a slip, so we know that's where they're going to be that particular day. They know they have to make up the work. You do have that rub with your colleagues, but it's understood. They're playing a sport. They're a student athlete.
I think one thing that's helped me with getting kids there has been the messaging, and I've seen that improve over the last few years. So like explaining what those weekend events are, not only from me as a instructor to students, but talking to parents about like the importance of it, helping them understand how it actually is equal to a basketball game or a football game, and really describing what it is that goes into it will allow parents and students and everyone involved to make a more informed decision. So like, I do still have the issues of people being uncomfortable with going to certain neighborhoods, or students having jobs and other commitments. But because I was able to message what those Saturday events were, they were able to come for an hour or come for 2 hours, come a little bit late or something like that, and not feel as though that they were kind of burdening the process, but still being a part of it. So I think that that's really helpful I would imagine that that's helpful for schools as well, to know exactly what it is that you're asking for your principal's assistance with. Like, this is what it is. This is what I need this is why I need students to be there. On Saturday events, it is a little bit different for me because I'm not actively in a school. So actually having it on a weekday would be terrible for me. But I support the idea of it in general because I think it helps more students than it hurts.
So if we became a sport, could we do smaller meets at the end of the day instead of having only one big day long thing? Do small groups of meets?
So, in fact, this year, if there is a this year, we're back in a league structure. And in a league structure for FTC, there's a series of meets, and they are much shorter events. Last time Philadelphia FTC ran as a league was in 2015. I think 15,
No.
16.
No, couldn't
No.
have been that. What is this? This is 2021.
I think because I think I had
19.
I think
Well,
I had 2 years.
I wasn't at Girls High when they ran them. That's how I know.
Okay.
So I came to Girls High, and this is my 6th year, so that was 14. This is my 6th year, beginning of my 6th year, so that would have been either 14, 15, or 13. I remember probably 14, 15.
So 14, 15 was my first year at Central, and it was definitely meets then. And I thought I had 2 years, so that might have just been 1. In any case,
Okay. Okay.
In the meets, so we ran them as they were after school. They ran like 3:30 to 6:30. Temple Engineering hosted them, and so you play. There's no judging at a meet. You just play matches, and as we did it last time, there were sort of 2 rounds of meets. So half of the teams went on Wednesday, half the teams went on Thursday, and then a month later you did it all again, and your 5 best rounds from the meets gave you a ranking going into the league championship. And if I remember correctly, when we had the league back in 14, 15, wherever it was, every team qualified for the league championship, but you can also run it where not all teams qualify for the league championship, and the meet scores are used to rank and figure out who qualifies for the championship. So anyway, going into this year, the plan, I'm sorry.
That's
Never
okay.
mind.
So let me
I'm
just
okay.
interject something so people know. When the league structure started, it was at 4:40. Okay, and I won't say. I'm not going to say it was when it started. I just know that when I participated as the coach at Overbrook, they were at 4:40, and Dave and others who have been a part of this forever were there running those. It wasn't as clear to teams as they participated how you advance, because I remember not being clear on points versus qualifying, so it was a little murky. Maybe just because we weren't as aware as participants, but they was in the atrium at 440 at one time, which had its benefits because people know how to get there. It had a downside in that teams didn't have as much interaction. You didn't have the pits the same way, and I don't know. It was a little weird, some of that. But just as a backdrop, I think there were people who couldn't come because still there. You had to get there. So how do you get there after school? And there were those kinds of things. So this year we're going to do. I saw they're going to be leagues, but does that mean that the students have to participate there, or it's all virtual, right?
They're remote events. So you can, anywhere where you have at least a half a field, you can play your rounds and report your scores. So there's not going to be any in-person Pennsylvania FGC events until, they hope, the state championship.
So in Philadelphia, how would that work?
So it would mean that there would be, so certainly anybody who has at least half a field, and you don't even need the foam and the perimeter, but you need the official field elements for a half field. So anybody who already has those at their school can just do their rounds at their school, and you score your own. We would also set up a few locations, or maybe just the schools that have the fields will invite other teams to come and use their fields to log their scores. But there's no events where students or from multiple teams are present at the same time with each other.
Right. But specific individual teams would be together with themselves.
Yes.
To do the, so how does, okay.
So yeah, it only works at all if the individual teams can get together to, build a robot.
Right.
Right. So it means that essentially what it means is there's no additional barrier to compete beyond what you need to meet in order to build the robot in the first place. So if your team can get together enough to build a robot, you can also get together enough to compete.
Right. But if you can get together to build it, but you can't get into the schools, you have to have another place to actually do that.
Right.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of what we're saying. It's like you need a room somewhere that you can set everything up in that's not the school district if we're not in those buildings.
Right. And I'm not worried about that part. Like I think that if teams can get together enough to build a robot, I'm confident can find a solution to getting them on a half field to compete. It's the first part that is much more up in the air. Yeah. Right. And that's why our conversation last week was really about coming up with virtual programming, not First Tech Challenge, but virtual programming that we can do from the get-go in September and continue as long as we need to keep our programs alive and keep our students engaged in learning.
Yeah, but in order to compete, if you build a robot, part and parcel of building it is testing it on the playing field. So, I mean, initially they're not as linked as they very quickly become.
Yeah.
What happened? I guess you can tell us after this. I don't want to. So
I was going to say, I don't want to stop this conversation necessarily because I think it's really important. I also recognize that we only have 5 minutes left in our allotted time frame, and I just wanted to give us a chance to wrap up. And I know you all will have lots more conversations going forward about how this all shakes out over the coming year. So just to wrap up, I want to do a closing circle activity. So we will go around and just share a word or phrase that's something that you take away from this conversation today. Maybe something that you take away in a like, this is something I'm going to carry forward and keep thinking about kind of way. And I will accept volunteers for who would like to go first.
I'd say exciting collaboration.
I say hopeful, because now I have hope that this season can continue.
It was just nice to see everybody's faces and hear everybody's ideas. And yeah, there's a lot that's kind of facing us, but yeah, it gave me hope and it excited me for kind of what's to come. So thanks everybody.
Yeah, and I'm reminded again of like the power and energy of our collaboration that drives this whole thing.
Human resources. There's a lot of them on this call and a lot in our coalition.
Thanks. And I guess my closing thought is I appreciated how much of the conversation is around kind of teaching each other and helping each other learn. And I hope that that's something that you all can carry forward with you. I think that's what a coalition is really great at. I mean, to Chris's point too, the brain trust of people that really just strengthens and elevates what everyone can do. So thank you so much for your time and your participation today. You might not see my face again in the near future, but I know you'll have lots more conversations with Michael and Gloria, and we'll make sure that you are kept involved in kind of how this strategy process unfolds and what the kind of vision and long-term goals of the coalition are. And if you have any questions or want to talk more one-on-one, please feel free to reach out to me, or you can contact Michael and he'll connect you to me. You know, I'm happy to talk more about any of the things that have come up today. So thank you so very much. Any parting last words? Yes.
Can I just ask one question? So you're going to have a student group. Do you still need students for that, or are they coming from a particular place? Did I understand correctly? You're having a student group?
Yeah, Gloria was working on that. And it was going to be the students who are the new student advisory committee or whatever you all are calling it.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Gloria is putting that group together.
So I think if you have suggestions, please feel free to connect with Gloria directly about that.
I, if you don't mind, would like to take a little screenshot of our smiling faces for oh, you're smiling. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Great. I'm trying to get our coalition Facebook page to have a little bit more content. So whenever there's a thing, I'm trying to get something up.
Cool.